For that. Well, it's Good Friday, a time when Christians commemorate the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Some refer to this week as Holy Week. It has also been a gripping, news-filled week. Among the top international stories, the fire that ravaged the historic Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. Let's get a perspective now. Archbishop William Slattery joins us now live from our Pretoria studios. Archbishop, great to have you on the program, especially on Good Friday. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's just talk a bit about this incident in Paris. Our Lady of Paris, the Notre Dame Cathedral, devastated by fire. When you first heard about this tragedy, Archbishop, what went through your mind?
Well, look, it is a terrible tragedy in that this was a tremendous monument to the faith, a tremendous monument to the culture and art of France. It is 850 years there at the centre of the great city, the capital of France, of Paris, reminding people of God's closeness to his people, of God's call to them. And you know, yes, people are asking questions about spending money, so much money on repairing this great cathedral when we have so many needs in the world. But remember, it is a place like a cathedral like this, which inspires, you know, so many good things in the world. A cathedral is a place where the word of God is preached, where Christ is made present for his people, and where Christ challenges his people to care for each other, because that is the message of Easter.
Yeah.
The message of Easter, we can see it very clearly, you know, when we read the last chapters of St. John's Gospel, where we find Jesus actually just within 24 hours of his death talking to his disciples. And what does he do? He washes their feet. And so a cathedral like Notre Dame is really a call that Christians go into the world with that attitude of serving each other, of not being proud or oppressing each other, but rather be people who are at the feet of others and serving them. Again, Jesus, you know, on the night before he died, he said, "My prayer is that the people of the world be one, that we be united, just as the Father and Jesus were one, that the Christian people throughout the whole world be one." Indeed, we have failed so often in this, but a cathedral like Notre Dame is a call to us. Do not forget what the Master, who is the origin, the source of Notre Dame and all cathedrals and churches and all Christian life in the world, what he is calling us to do.
Archbishop.
So yes, it is a tremendous loss.
It was so sad to watch that spire falling. I remember journalist Chris Cuomo describing it as a physical manifestation of the aspiration of something better up above us. So that was tragic. But some of the cathedral's most venerated relics were saved. The crown of thorns, believed to have been placed on the head of Christ during his crucifixion. That great famous organ, reportedly, I think 8,000 pipes survived. It's heady stuff, Archbishop, when you think about it. But sometimes, I guess, the more dismal the situation is, the more, I guess, hopeful we become. You were talking about this earlier. From that tragedy, do you get a sense of the, I guess, resiliency and hope, which some would say is appropriate during Holy Week?
Sorry, could you summarize the question again?
Just talking about the resiliency and some of the relics that were saved during this devastating fire. The crown of thorns, we were talking about the great organ, one of the most famous musical instruments in the world. I was just asking you, know, from this tragedy, do you get a sense of hope and renewal?
Yes, I thank you very much. I do get a sense of hope and renewal. Not only that relics were saved. Relics are just material items that remind us of something else. You know, we human beings, it's probably one of our most fundamental things. You know, you take a little baby of just 2 months old. I mean, you can hold that baby in the palm of your hand. And if you put your little finger into the tiny hand of that baby, the baby will hold on to you. This is a human instinct. We want to belong, we want to hold on to each other, we want to touch each other. And so these relics are simply reminders of something much more important. Relics are just material things.
Yeah.
It's a way in which we can touch the gospel, perhaps in a little way, in order to reflect upon the gospel. Because it's not only a question of knowing the gospel, it is of understanding it, is of feeling it, so that really what happened on Good Friday enters into the lives and hearts of our people. You know, you see the world today, how much violence there is in the world, how much insensitivity, how much wars there are in the world.
Yeah.
Recently, President Ramaphosa spoke to religious leaders here in Pretoria, and I was happy to be there. And he pointed out many of the troubles we have in South Africa. And really and truly, we really need this Good Friday. We really need this Easter for the churches to play their part in the recreation of a new South Africa.
Archbishop,
let's
just talk more about that in terms of the important message on Good Friday, rebirth and renewal being some of them. Here in South Africa, nation building is key, as you were mentioning. Working against racism and xenophobia is key. Fighting gender-based violence is important and demands urgency, you would agree. What sort of role do you think religious leaders play in addressing these challenges?
Yeah, definitely, really and truly. You know, Easter is precisely for that. Good Friday is precisely for that. It's to bring all Christians back to the feet of Christ crucified, to gaze upon him, to read these words of the gospel. Today now in Catholic churches in the whole world, for over 1,300,000,000 people, will be reading the gospel of St. John, the last chapters that tell us about how Jesus died and why he died. He died that people may have humanity. You know, when we look at the cross, we like to display the cross in our churches and in our homes, because when we look upon it, we see two things. We see the evil that we do to each other through our sin, through our hatred, through the human trafficking, through our xenophobia. There, when we see the beaten body of Christ, we're looking at what sin does, what hatred does, what this selfishness in human life is doing to other people. But also, and this is most important, and why we call it Good Friday, is because today we see the most important thing of all, how much God is prepared to do for us, how good God is, how loved we are. So that God really and truly, he could not go any farther. He did not stop an hour before his death and step down from the cross. He went the whole way. He expected the whole depth of being human. He died on the cross for us. And so today is a day, yes, of great sadness in many ways when we look at the evil of the world. But it's a day of great challenge when we're invited to look at the goodness of God, how loved we are. Because Jesus has put no restrictions. All we have to do is look at him, believe in him, return to him, and we will find that he embraces us, that he is really assuring us that we are loved. Because unless we believe that we are loved, we will not have the power within us to be reconciled with others, to love others, to appreciate other people. You see in South Africa how slow we are as different so-called racial groups to really understand each other, to be sensitive to the sufferings and doubts and hesitations of each other. So really, unless we allow our emotions, our compassion to be penetrated by the love of God for us, we will not have the human strength to forgive, to reconcile, and to start again. Really, we're coming up to an election, and really this Easter message is, look, let us be people of unity, a people who wash each other's feet, a people really who look towards God and draw strength. Jesus said, I am the vine, you are the branches. So if we are to really bring humanity, if we really are to bring God into South Africa, then we must allow the message of Good Friday to truly penetrate us.
Archbishop, we're living in no doubt interesting times. We've covered some interesting stories of late. One of them being this video of a man apparently being raised from the dead that went viral. I'm sure you've seen it. I want to get your take on this and other issues. When faced with such stories, how do you approach it? Because, I mean, a miracle by its very definition is an event not explicable by natural or scientific laws. And I know Catholics and Christians generally believe in miracles. So how do you approach this? What's your take?
Yeah, but miracles take place in reality. Miracles are not the results of set up situations. You know, and Jesus warned us also against miracles. He says later on people will come pretending to do miracles and pretending to speak in my name. When you see a miracle, ask yourself, as Lenin used to ask of his communist followers, who benefits? Who benefits? When Jesus died on the cross, he lost everything. When these so-called prophets, when they put on these shows, and that's all it is, then they are pretending. This is not a true thing. This brings a bad name and a bad image to Christianity. Look, the people who believed in the resurrection of Jesus died for that belief. The prophets who so-called claim to raise people from the dead, their only benefit is more money, more followers, more impact, more proclamation of themselves, more egoistic promotion of themselves. Jesus moves in a totally different generation. The real servants of Jesus hide themselves. They're filled with humility, and they're always doing good for the world. You look at our own church here in South Africa. You know, for 200 years we have been serving the wonderful people of this country. All the first rural clinics in this country were founded by the Catholic Church. All the first rural clinics, 60 of the hospitals, the schools everywhere. And the people who did that are buried in unknown graves all over the country. Mainly women, nuns, who came from other countries, came from South Africa itself, and dedicated their whole life in silence and total commitment to little poor children who are today, thank God, becoming the new nation of South Africa. Miracles really, you have to ask who benefits from the miracle. Is it that so-called prophet who is trying to build himself up and earn more money? Or is it really someone who is actually having pity on the suffering like Jesus did? He lost everything, but God, it is God who rewards it. That's the meaning of Good Friday, is that Jesus lost everything. Father, why have you abandoned me? And yet a few days later, his Father raises him from the dead, and his Spirit is released into the world, so that today we can draw upon Jesus. So by praying today, reading the scriptures today, we are called to begin to be charitable to each other, to love each other, to have mercy for each other. We must touch the wounds of Christ. In Catholic churches today, many people like just to kiss the feet of Christ crucified. But really what they're doing is saying, we love you, Jesus. We ask that the sufferings you suffered for other people, that we may take on some of these sufferings for our brothers and sisters. Because look at the inequality in our country. Look at the suffering of abused women and children. Look at the people who are suffering because of xenophobia. Look at all the young men who are educated and cannot find work. Look at the families that are broken. So really and truly, Jesus is not dead on the cross. He is never more alive than on the cross today. And he is screaming into our hearts, my Christians, get up, allow me, roll back the stone from the tomb, allow me to come alive together again, to start again, to do my work through you. We are the instruments of Christ. So this is not just a commemoration of the past, like we might remember 1994. This is a celebration in which we encounter God today, and hopefully South Africans will begin to belong to each other, have pity on each other, and serve each other, wash each other's feet.
Archbishop, we appreciate your views. Thank you very much indeed for coming on. Thank you very much for your time and insight. Have a blessed Easter and be well.
Thank you very much for having me, and God bless all your viewers.
God bless.
Thank you.
Well, so for some in South Africa, Good Friday and pickled fish go together. The history of the traditional Easter dish goes back hundreds of years in the Cape, while some choose to prepare it using recipes that have been passed down from generations to generations. Others prefer to just buy some from the local supermarket.